Time to talk about how we can make some money on UFC Vegas 118, Muhammad versus Bonfim, which goes down this Saturday, June 6th. I'm going to break down every fight on the card. Let's jump right into it. Once again, we got ladies kicking things off. It's Souza taking on Carnelossi, and this is another female rematch. They've been doing this constantly this year. We got like Bruna Brazil versus Alexia Thainara rematch, Jocelyn Edwards, Nora Cornell rematch. Not sure why we're getting all these, but this is in fact a rematch, and believe it or not, Carnelossi got that one done, but it was a long time ago. We can probably throw it out the window at this point. Souza at this point, she's very aggressive. She more recently has been using a pressure style, coming forward with her hands low, winging big punches, kind of looking like Jessica Andrade at times. Not messing around, getting after it. And even though she got finished by Carnelossi in that fight way back, recently she's been seeming a lot more durable. And her grappling seems to have improved also. In the past, she would get caught on her back when taken down, but now I think she does a better job of getting back up, finding ways to her feet, and she'll even try to mix in some takedowns of her own. Really, overall, I think she's gotten a lot better. She's got good head movement when she wants to. She's got good kicks. She's always had good kicks. And yeah, really powerful hands. The problem is, I don't think she's too bright. And in fact, if you go back to the breakdown I did for her against Bruna Brazil, I had a bet on Souza for that fight, but I mentioned her fight IQ is not too great and that she should not try to wrestle or cage press against Brazil. Well, go back and watch that fight. What did she do? She wrestled in cage press, so you cannot trust Souza to make too many good decisions. That's the big issue I have with her. But Carnelossi has not been having a lot of success recently. I think her last win was against Piera Rodriguez, but you got to put that win in quotation marks. She just got a disqualification win because Rodriguez tried to headbutt her from the top. Carnelossi, she's going to come forward. She's going to try to maybe pull and then counter with these hook combinations. But they don't really have a lot of steam on them. Her striking's kind of stiff. Doesn't look very fluid. It's a lot worse than Souza's overall. Carnelossi can offensively wrestle a bit, but defensively, her wrestling's awful. She has some of the worst takedown defense you'll ever see statistically. And one of these fighters, it looks like she doesn't even try to defend takedowns. So if you go for one, you'll probably get it. She can work her way back up one down, but might take her a little while. Souza might actually be able to get takedowns here. And the durability of Carnelossi is not looking great. She even seemed to get hurt on the feet against Talita Alencar, and if you're getting hurt by Alencar, there might not be any help for you. So, needless to say, while this fight is taking place on the feet, I've got to imagine Souza with her heavy power is going to be able to hurt Carnelossi at some point. So I'm kind of surprised that we're getting so much plus money on the under 2.5 if you look at those lines. I think there's a really good chance Souza could get a finish here. But if not, she'll probably just hurt Carnelossi, land the better shots. I don't really see Carnelossi getting ahead on the strike numbers with her style of striking. She's not too good at avoiding shots, so I think they're just going to clash in the pocket, and Souza will get the better of those exchanges. Souza also has the better kicks from distance, and based on what I've seen, if Carnelossi gets takedowns, Souza can probably get back up, and Souza might even take down Carnelossi. So, yeah, I think Souza should be fairly heavily favored, but not interested in playing minus 280. At some point, the poor fight IQ has to be a concern. You cannot trust her in important situations, but I do think she avenges her loss, and while I'm going to say Souza gets it done by decision, I think the under 2.5 could be a good look because I definitely see Souza landing some big shots here. We got another women's fight. Chaves taking on Yannis Duben. And we're stepping up in weight class, but we're not stepping up too much in skill level. Holy crap. So, if there's one thing we did learn about Chaves in her Contender Series fight, it's that, she can persist through adversity, because that fight went 3 rounds. It was getting kind of ugly for her at times. Sofia Montenegro hurt her at one point, but she hung in there till the end, and she landed quite a few strikes. If you look at the strike numbers, she was definitely throwing a lot and landing with some success. Now, she got a split decision win. In my opinion, you can make an argument for Chaves, but I think most people would agree Montenegro was the rightful winner of that fight. And some would even call it a robbery. I'm not sure I would, but that definitely wasn't a decisive victory by any means. Now, Chaves, she's not the worst striker in the world. We don't really have a great understanding of what her skill set is. There's just not a ton of tape available on her. So, we've got that Contender Series fight. You can see some highlights from some other fights and then at least one other full-length fight, but just not a lot to go off of. Throws a lot of right hands, throws a lot of left hooks. Sometimes she'll fire the left hook on an angle to sort of escape the pocket. She got some calf kicks too. Not tremendous wrestling, not tremendous jiu-jitsu abilities as far as I can see, but she does have some evidence of decent striking, and like I said, she does seem to be able to persist through some adversity, put some volume together. But the big thing is we just don't know a lot about her, and she's making her UFC debut here, and we don't know how that affects fighters. More often than not, UFC fighters lose when they make their debut. They've got all those jitters to deal with, and sometimes it can be hard for them to perform at their best under the big lights. She's taking on Yannis Duben here. Now don't get me wrong, both of these ladies have some good physical attributes, but in terms of physical attributes that benefit you for fighting, not really sure Duben has any of those. She's kind of shorter, more compact, only 5'4" for the flyweight division, listed at 2 inches shorter than Chaves, but I wouldn't be surprised if the differential is greater than what's indicated on Tapology or in the stats. Yannis Duben, she's just gonna wing some big punches, sort of windmill overhands. Has some kicks as well. Not really anything crazy with the footwork. Not really anything crazy to say about her striking abilities overall. I will say, even though she might not be the most skilled, not the most physically imposing, she does throw with bad intentions. Like, she definitely wants to hurt you when she's winging those punches. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But, sort of the same thing with Chaves, right? We don't have a lot of tape available on Duben. And at least with Chaves, we've seen her go 3 rounds. With Duben, I don't think she's been a decision a single time. And look at her Contender Series fight, her UFC fight, which is probably what we would try to draw information from the most. Those ended very quickly, both in the first round, and her Contender Series fight early in the first round. So I really don't know anything about her grappling or really much about her striking at all. So the crazy thing is, when I saw this matchup, I thought I was gonna do this whole spiel on the video where I put multiple $1,000s on Chaves, because I imagine this would be a fight most people wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. There's no way anyone's going to bet this fight, but just to prove how degenerate I am, I'm going to put thousands of dollars on Jesla Chaves. Then I saw the betting line. I'm like, are you serious? How are we saying Chaves can be minus 400? I get the logic. She's bigger, she's going to be more physically imposing, looks more athletic. So based on that information, you would say she could be better than Duben, and then also Duben just doesn't look great with the way she's winging overhands. But at the end of the day, this is just a filthy, greasy Apex card. I think most of the people who are favored should be favored, but they're favored by too much. And we know there are going to be some underdogs coming through in ways people don't expect, because the favorites, they're going to fumble, they're going to drop the ball, screw things up. And yeah, Chaves is a good candidate for that. And at minus 400, if you fumble, there's going to be a lot of value on the plus 300 going the other way. So if you're looking for a bet, you got to go with Duben here. Now, that's exactly what I'd be thinking. And yeah, I already planned on putting a bet on Duben myself, because we've seen Chaves get hurt and she could get whacked by one of those big overhands. And like I said, we just don't know a ton about these ladies. I'd be lying to you if I could put together some sort of technical breakdown about how this fight's going to go. There are just too many gaps in the information we have available. So give me Yannis Duben by first round KO. And yeah, you got to go with the big plus money here, if anything. Fun fight with the featherweights. We got Jordan Leavitt and Joe Anderson Brito. Now, Jordan Leavitt coming off a big win against the undefeated Yadier Del Valle, or formerly undefeated. Jordan Leavitt has submissions he can use from just about everywhere. He can throw up triangles, omoplatas from his back. If he takes your back, he can start looking for chokes. He can look for front chokes, just about whatever he wants. He's dangerous in the jiu-jitsu realm in all areas. There's not really anywhere you're going to be safe against this guy. He also has a bunch of ways to get the fight to the ground. He can drop to a double, a high crotch, get good lift. He's got decent trips. He's good if he can take your back standing, start dragging you down. I like that he has a lot of ways to get the fight to the ground, but I'm just not really sure how many takedowns he has in the tank. If you look at his fights, he seems to tire out, flake out as the fights draw on, so that's one thing I don't like about him. His striking obviously isn't great, doesn't have a ton of power. He's going to throw a lot of kicks from both legs, both his rear and lead leg, including front kicks to the body. Not really super effective, but he can use those to poke from range, and doesn't have heavy hands or really good boxing at all. But hilariously, the striking seems to work sometimes, even at times against Yadier Del Valle. the striking seemed to be effective. And he's got, a tiny bit of boxing he can use when his opponents fire into the pocket. But obviously, that's not going to be how he's winning most of his fights. It's going to be through the grappling. Now, Brito, on the other hand, is an absolute madman on the feet. He's going to try to wing these huge calf kicks. He's going to pressure forward. He's almost always just getting right after his opponent as soon as the fights start. And he's got huge hooks that he wings, just throwing everything he has into every strike. The problem is, you usually can't keep things on the feet because that'd be a good idea given how good his chin is and how much power he has. But he's just always in the clinch. He always ends up in grappling exchanges. He actually spends more time grappling than he does being in space. And being in the grappling so much can be an issue because we see this guy get taken down a lot. The takedown defense is not great. Even though he's strong, he just doesn't really try to keep the fight on the feet enough. And although he's got some skills to get back to his feet, he can kick off, use a jiu-jitsu get-up, and just sort of dig an underhook, work back up. It can take a while at times, so he ends up conceding a lot of control time, and that's probably the main concern we should have here, because if he gets into a grappling exchange with Leavitt, Leavitt might be able to turn him around on the fence, take him down, and then while Brito's hard to submit, I can imagine Leavitt holding him down a bit. The problem is, like I mentioned, Brito can get back up to his feet, and then if Brito's able to re-wrestle, reverse position, get Leavitt to the ground, because Brito has pretty strong offensive wrestling himself when he wants to, then Leavitt might be stuck on his back for a while too, especially if he gets tired out. So the way I see this fight going, Jordan Leavitt could definitely find some trips, manage to take down Brito early on, but I do think Brito's going to eventually work back to his feet, probably re-wrestle, and end up on top of Leavitt at some point, and then Leavitt, I think, is easier to submit. It's easier to get a tap out of him. So if both these guys are throwing submission attempts at each other, I think it's more likely Leavitt who's going to end up submitted. And then because he tires out, and I think Brito has way better stamina, we can expect him to even get more control time down the stretch. So yeah, I think Brito gets this one done around 65-ish% of the time. So if his line continues to drop, I'm going to probably place a bet on him. Give me Brito by first round submission. But it could definitely happen in later rounds if Leavitt starts to get tired. Third women's fight, Chelsea Chandler taking on Priscilla Cachoeira. This is going to be an interesting one here. Chelsea Chandler fights out of the southpaw stance. Hits pretty hard for the most part. Even though she can't take a shot, she seems to be able to dish it out pretty well. Throws the left hand, has a lot of power on that. That's her main strike. She'll throw out a lead hand or right hook from the southpaw stance, but it doesn't quite seem to have as much steam on it. And then not a ton of kicks from Chandler. It is worth noting she can clinch up, work some strikes in the clinch, and she even has an outside trip takedown, but we don't see that too much. We saw her pull it out of the bag against Josiane Nunez, and that's actually how she beat Nunez, is by getting takedowns in 2 of the 3 rounds. So that might be key here since Cachoeira can't grapple. But the big problem with Chandler is probably something I don't even have to tell you guys. Everybody knows about the time she got punched by Norma Dumont and ran away. And then in her most recent fight over a year ago against Jocelyn Edwards, she seemed to just curl up and quit as soon as Edwards hit her hard. And I know Edwards hits with a lot of power. She even knocked out Priscilla Cachoeira not too long ago. But I just don't like the way Chelsea Chandler reacts to getting hit hard. I think, once she gets whacked, she sort of just shuts down, might just end up getting finished right there, or just try to avoid the fight. That's the biggest issue with Chandler, I'd say, is just not being able to react well to strikes. Cachoeira, she's going to get after it. She's going to pressure forward. Chelsea Chandler likes to pressure forward a lot, but sometimes she can end up on the back foot, so I could definitely see Cachoeira being the one pressuring forward here. And her striking's kind of stiff. She's getting up there in age. Cachoeira is definitely not very fast, kind of slow, and then not very fluid with the strike. She sort of just tries to pull to avoid her opponent's strikes and then counter, but she leaves her chin right up in the air. And in her last fight against Claudia Segura, you could see she had a really difficult time closing the distance because Segura was using some good footwork. Now Chelsea Chandler, even though she will be on the retreat at times, I'm not so sure she has good enough footwork to replicate what Segura did. I think if she's backing up, Cachoeira probably will be able to find her. And even though Cachoeira has gotten chinned in her last loss, I'd say she can take a shot much better than Chandler. Chandler might quit. Cachoeira might get knocked out, but she's not going to quit. However, Cachoeira is terrible at grappling, so even though Chandler is not some great wrestler, she only has like one primary way of getting the fight to the ground. You don't really see her level change. She just kind of looks for an outside trip. We do have to be wary of the fact that if Cachoeira gets taken down, she's pretty horrible on the ground, doesn't really have any jiu-jitsu skills, and doesn't have much of a get-up game. But she is pretty strong, can defend most takedowns. So I think this fight could be determined by who's going forward and who can hurt whom first. Chelsea Chandler, she absolutely could knock out Priscilla Cachoeira. Cachoeira's getting up there in age, like I said, and she can be chinned, but very easily Cachoeira could whack Chandler with something and hurt her. Even though Chandler's fighting out of a southpaw stance, I don't think it's necessarily going to be that hard for Cachoeira to find a way to hurt her. Chandler's not like crazy good defensively, doesn't have any sort of crazy footwork. And once she gets cracked by Cachoeira, I think she's probably going to want out. Now, she might be able to wrestle, might be able to find a takedown. That's a path forward for her. But if I had to go with who I think is more likely to win this fight, I'm going to say Cachoeira, based almost entirely on sheer toughness. And of the three ladies fights, which I all think can finish, this one looks like is the most probable to go under 2.5, according to the sports books at least. And yeah, I think there's a decent chance of a finish here. Gonna go with Cachoeira KO1. Even money for a betting line, that's not quite enough for me. If it gets to plus 110, you get some more meat on the bone there. I think you can place a bet. So I'll be keeping an eye on the line, but for now, I'm just gonna say Cachoeira KO1. Decent fight here. We got flyweights. Bruno Silva taking on Edgar Chairez. Bruno Silva is pretty good at everything. He's going to wing a lot of heavy combinations. Definitely one of the more powerful flyweights in the organization. But he's got pretty good kicks too. He will try to slip back and counter with strikes as he pressures forward. Usually he's on the pressure and he does a decent job with that. But even though he tries to slip back to avoid his opponent's strikes, I don't think his defense is that great overall. Doesn't really slip a lot, doesn't really move his head laterally, and you can usually tag him without too much trouble. His chin, for the most part, holds up pretty well, but we've seen him get finished in fights where he just took a ton of cumulative damage, like against Joshua Van and against Manel Kopp. So, yeah, you can add up damage and finish this guy, even though he's pretty durable overall. And recently, we've seen him mix in some more grappling, so he's always had pretty good grappling. He's always been able to defend takedowns pretty well and work back to his feet when necessary, but against Hyun Sung Park this last October, he was trying to get a bunch of takedowns himself and was showing some really good wrestling with single legs and such. So Bruno Silva, even though he's getting up there in age, definitely has a lot of experience, has a lot of skill, and he's been showing that in a lot of his fights. Edgar Chairez, on the other hand, I think is maybe a little bit overrated. His main weapons on the feet are a jab and a calf kick. He is going to be longer than Bruno Silva here. He's going to be quite a bit younger. I think if he sticks out that jab repeatedly, he can do a lot of damage. A problem is that if he gets taken down, sometimes he's not super eager to get up. I believe he can do a technical BJJ get up, but a lot of times he's just looking for submissions, and he has been successful with those submissions in the past. I just don't think they're going to work on Silva. So if Silva's going for takedowns, Chairez is going to have to make sure he defends them and then not waste time doing jiu-jitsu nonsense. I also don't think Chairez has the best cardio, so he was a big favorite in his last fight against Felipe Bunes in February, and a lot of people were betting on Chairez because they thought he'd have the better stamina down the stretch. That was not a great performance by him. He barely won the fight by split decision, and I don't think his conditioning is that good at all. I think Bruno Silva, even though he's gotten finished in the third round a couple of times, he's going to be able to push a higher pace down the stretch. So ultimately, I look at this fight. The only real advantages Chairez has, in my opinion, are the length, because he's got 5 inches in reach. He could use his jab with that extra length, and then the age difference. But other than that, I don't really think he's better anywhere. I think Bruno Silva is going to be able to hit harder. I think he could break down Chairez down the stretch if he's pressuring a lot. Then he could also get some control time if he's going for takedowns and Chairez is doing BJJ nonsense. But minus 135, I don't want to bet that. I get nervous when these flyweights and fighters at the lower weight classes are getting up there in age. I do think this fight probably goes the distance, but I also think Bruno Silva could be live for a KO, possibly even a submission. I think he could, again, break Chairez in the later rounds. So I think Bruno Silva most likely gets this one done by decision. Not betting on it. think it could be kind of close. Bantamweights, Marcus McGhee taking on John Yannis. John Yannis returning after he fought back in April. Marcus McGhee, his striking's really fun to watch. It's super fluid. He's going to move around really well, uses angles, mixes up the targets, goes to the body. Everywhere he goes, straight on, hooks, uppercuts, just throwing at you like an octopus. You can never really tell where he's going to be hitting from. He's got decent power as well, and he definitely throws with a good amount of volume. Like I said, uses angles. He's going to try to make sure he has optimal foot position to land on his opponents while they can't land back on him. And he's going to fire in combinations. He's not just doing one at a time. He's going to make sure he racks up the damage on you. And he is getting older. Now, the durability so far seems to have held up. I haven't really seen this guy get rocked at all. But he is getting into his late 30s, so that is something that's going to have to be a concern. He went up against the current champion, Petr Yan, in his last fight, and yeah, gave a great account of himself. Didn't really seem to get hurt that badly. And now that Yan is the champion, yeah, Marcus McGhee is looking really good after that performance, and that's his only loss in the UFC so far. Taking on John Yannis. John Yannis, also a very good striker. Very skilled with the boxing. Not really a lot of things I could knock him for in that realm. He also has good kicks. But, last time he had his fight against Jamie Siraj, and people mentioned the grappling, how it's a bit of a concern. Sometimes he can give up his back. And he's not really that great with jiu-jitsu. He's kind of scrappy, so he'll try to fight out of bad positions. But in terms of being skilled in the grappling, he's not great. But for this fight, I think the big problem for him is that sometimes he's low volume. Although he's a good striker overall, when I compare him to Marcus McGhee, I think he's just a level below McGhee. So ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Neither of these guys are really looking to grapple that much. I think it's going to be primarily a striking match. And John Yannis, while he's a good striker, I think Marcus McGhee's just a lot better. Better use of angles, better combinations, better volume. Probably hits a little bit harder too. Although John Yannis has hurt a lot of people, done some serious damage in his career so far, including his last fight against Jamie Siraj. But like I said, I think McGhee's just a step above him, so I agree with him being favored. I just don't think he should be minus 550. I don't really know I can justify that. But at the same time, even though I like betting big underdogs, I think, when there's a chance the favorite could fumble, take a stab at the big plus money. It's just I really don't want to bet on John Yannis here. I think he's going to lose. I think McGhee is clearly a better fighter. Going to say McGhee gets this one done by decision. Kind of neck and neck with the KO. I will say if he does get a KO, I think it'll be in round 2 or later. I think the damage will just start to add up on John Yannis. But we'll go Marcus McGhee decision. Oh boy, light heavyweights. Ivo Baraniewski taking on Junior Tafa. So we had a couple short notice replacements on this card, and Junior Tafa is one of those replacements because Baraniewski's supposed to take on Billy Elikana, but Billy Elikana ended up pulling out, and I was kind of interested to see how that one went. Ivo Baraniewski is an absolute powerhouse. 100% of his wins as a professional come in the first round. He's just going to wing these huge overhands, and it's kind of tricky the way he throws them. He uses this tactic a lot where he steps through with the right overhand and then ducks and comes over the top with his left overhand. And that's how he took out Austin Lane. He used that, step through overhand, and then it was the left overhand that whacked Lane and took him out. Baraniewski also has pretty good calf kicks, which might work on Tafa because Tafa has terrible calf kick defense. And another thing that's big for this fight is that Baraniewski will go to the wrestling. And although Tafa doesn't have terrible takedown defense from a statistical perspective, if you can get him to the ground, he's absolutely clueless there. So if Baraniewski can find a takedown here, he might be in luck. He might even be able to find a submission because Junior Tafa, I think, would tap just about anything. So couple easy ways Baraniewski can win this fight. Rock Tafa early or go to the grappling. But to be perfectly honest, I'm just waiting to fade Baraniewski. And in fact, I've got a bet on Tafa here, even though I think Baraniewski's more likely to win because Baraniewski has terrible cardio. And you might not know this unless you go back to his amateur tape because you can see all sorts of red flags in between rounds when he's gotten out of the first round in those amateur fights. He's breathing so heavy. And then I've heard from other people he's gotten knocked out due to strikes from guard by people, and it was because he just got really fatigued. Just a lot of bad looks on his amateur record, and I highly doubt he's fixed the cardio that much And he's undefeated, but that's because he's getting it done every time in round 1. So the first time he has any difficulty getting the fight done in the first round, I think he's going to be in trouble. And then we also saw his chin can be cracked. Let's be honest, in the Ibo Aslan fight, which is when he made his UFC debut, he should have lost. If Ibo Aslan had 2 brain cells to rub together and could use an intelligent finishing sequence, Baraniewski would have been toast. All Aslan had to do was just, work his jab after Ivo got hurt, just stay at range, but he just kept swinging like a madman, stayed in Baraniewski's range, and that caused him to get caught and lose the fight. As Junior Tafa, he's not exactly a great fighter, but his main assets are the heavy power. He comes from a boxing background, kickboxing background. He's got a decent chin, too. Now, it could get cracked here just because Baraniewski has so much power, but definitely the chin has not been one of Tafa's problems so far. Problems with Tafa are that, let's be honest, he's just not that great at MMA. I already mentioned he can't defend calf kicks that well, and ideally if I'm trying to fade Baraniewski, I'd want to bet on someone who has decent stamina. It could be better than Baraniewski's, it probably is, but Junior Tafa does not have great conditioning himself, and he is what we would call a BJJ transparent belt. When you start jiu-jitsu, you get a white belt. It's not fair to those people to call Junior Tafa a white belt. He has to be a step even below that. So we would call him a BJJ transparent belt because his grappling is so bad. So like I said, if Baraniewski can get this fight to the ground, he might find an easy submission or TKO. But, the line's gotten out of hand. When it was minus 110, yeah, I agree, that's stupid. Obviously, Baraniewski would be the positive EV side there because he's going to win this fight more times than not, but it's just gotten out of hand now because all Junior Tafa has to do is land one clean punch at any point in the fight against this guy who, let's be honest, doesn't have some sort of crazy evasive footwork. It's not like he can't be hit, and yeah, he can get hurt, so Tafa could whack him, or if, it turns out Tafa's able to eat shots from this guy, maybe defend the takedown, he could whack Baraniewski, later in the fight. But I think, the under 1.5 line that you see for this fight, because it's something crazy like minus 300, that's probably accurate. I don't think this fight's going long. I think either guy could get KO'd. I'm going to say Ivo Baraniewski is the most likely victor here. I say he probably does it by first round KO, but either fighter could get a KO. I don't think this one's going to last too long. And if you're looking for a bet, you got to do Junior Tafa plus 269. That's an insane price because he could very easily win this fight. Ivo is definitely one of the fighters on this card who I think could fumble as a big favorite. So as a bet, we look to Tafa for sure. Oh gosh, we got Matt Schnell taking on Alessandro Costa. This is another short notice replacement. Matt Schnell is going to fight Emanuel Rodriguez and get smoked, most likely. And Costa stepping in. You see that this is a catchweight bout. I realized that a short while ago. It looks like it's going to be at 130 pounds according to Tapology. And you might be thinking, since the theme for this card is that it's a greasy Apex card, we look at the big underdogs, you might want to take Matt Schnell. But I just don't know if I can bring myself to do it because I'd be lying if I sat here and said, I knew how Matt Schnell was going to win this fight. I don't think it's a great matchup for him. I don't like Alessandro Costa that much. I don't think he's a great fighter. I think he's overrated. But let's be honest, he does have power, and Matt Schnell has no chin. He's already retired at least one time. He's come out of retirement, and he's running his own fight promotion. So how invested is this guy? He obviously doesn't have a lot much more in the tank, and he's been knocked out so many times. If Costa catches him clean, he's probably going to put him right out with his power. And the other problem with Schnell is his takedown defense isn't that great either. If Costa needs to take him down for whatever reason, he'll probably be able to. Maybe the one strength of Matt Schnell is his offensive jiu-jitsu. He's got a good triangle from his back. He can work a guillotine. He is pretty dangerous when you get him on the ground. He can definitely fight back with some submissions. And then, as we saw in the Jimmy Flick fight, if he ends up on top, he's got really good ground and pound and elbows. But still, even in the grappling, he's not really safe because he's really easy to tap. If you lock up anything on him, he's not going to fight through the submission. He'll tap pretty quick. And the problem with Matt Schnell is it's not as though he's got great defensive footwork. He's got that bad chin, and he's also kind of aggressive on the feet. He's not hard to hit, so it's going to be real easy to land those big shots. Costa, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to sit down some big punches, looks for a lot of hooks. Like I said at the beginning of this breakdown, I don't really like him. I don't think he's that great. I think he's hittable. Doesn't really have good footwork. Really, really predictable. with his striking. He kind of just, looks to settle down on those hooks whenever his opponent comes in the range. Not a lot of variety. But, Matt Schnell, I think he's going to be vulnerable to getting clipped by those hooks because it's not like he uses a lot of feints or has some good footwork. He kind of just walks right into danger. They call Matt Schnell Danger Schnell. I think, he's going to be in danger here. Costa's going to be winging those big hooks. Now, Matt Schnell, he has been known to go for takedowns, but Costa's pretty hard to take down. Once Costa is down, he can be controlled there for a bit. Sometimes he hangs out in non-dominant positions. But the problem is he's really strong. He gets good underhooks for his opponent shoot. Got good balance. So Costa is hittable and a little bit chinny. But Matt Schnell has barely any knockout wins on his record. So I don't know if Costa's going to have to worry about this here. Like I say, I don't like Costa that much. But I don't see Matt Schnell winning this fight. I think he's going to get chinned really early if the fight stays on the feet. I don't see Schnell getting takedowns. And if Costa gets Schnell down, I think he's probably going to be able to stay safe when Schnell's throwing up those submissions. So give me Costa by round 1 KO. I probably would need Schnell at like plus 1,000 to get interested on his side. And obviously, I'm not betting Costa at minus 700. He might win by sub. Costa inside the distance is very probable. He could win by sub if he gets Schnell down because Schnell is easy to tap out. But the KO, I'd say, is most likely. Bantamweights, Bryce Mitchell taking on Santiago Luna. Luna is stepping in for Victor Henry, so we got another replacement. We've got a greasy Apex card here, and we would need a greasy, filthy grappler to compete in the event, and that's what we've got in Bryce Mitchell. Just one of the filthiest, muddy farm grapplers you'll ever see. I mean, Bryce Mitchell, I'm not surprised he works on the farm. He kind of fights like a farmer, just someone who's in the mud, wrestling with hogs. That's basically what he wants to do. He just wants to get a hold of you, clinch you up, take you down. He's not some physically imposing specimen, but he's clearly really strong. When he gets a hold of you, he's hard to get off, and he's really, really skilled in the jiu-jitsu realm. When he's on the feet, he's not a terrible striker. He's going to work a lot of kicks from range. Now that he's fighting down at bantamweight, because of course he used to fight at featherweight, I think he's going to have a height and size advantage over a lot of these guys. So he's going to be able to really easily stay safe at range if he moves his feet well, if he pokes with his kicks. If he closes the distance, he can work his hands. He's got a nice jab, but nothing with a ton of power. The big issue with Mitchell is the durability is not that great. So, of course, he's only losing to guys who are high level. Like Ilia Topuria is one of his losses. Not really a ton of shame in that. Jean Silva. And then, of course, anybody can get knocked out by Emmett if he catches you right on the chin. So none of Mitchell's losses are too bad, but in my opinion, he definitely doesn't have the best chin because even in his last fight against Saeed Nurmagomedov, he got chinned early then. And now that he's cutting more weight, his chin could be even more vulnerable. But overall, Bryce Mitchell's a very good fighter. He can fire into a double leg. He can work trips or try to work to your back from the body lock. If he gets a hold of you, he's got a number of ways to get the fight to the ground. Santiago Luna, young buck, only about 21 years old. His greatest strength for MMA might be his boxing. So he comes from a wrestling background, but the boxing's looking pretty crisp. Decent head movement when he pressures forward. Has really good combinations. I like the way he digs to the body. Overall, I'd say his boxing's solid. And his chin, like Mitchell's, probably isn't the best. He did get whacked by Quang Lee in his UFC debut. We haven't really seen the chin tested a ton. So who knows? Maybe that was just a fluke thing, but I'd say he probably doesn't have the best chin. And one thing I know for sure is that this guy will slow down. Part of that just because he fights at a crazy pace in most of the matchups you see him in. But one thing that's pretty easy to notice is that he slows down. He's not someone who can maintain the pace he fights at. And if he slows down against Mitchell here, if he gets tired out through the grappling exchanges, he could be in real trouble. Now, I don't really know a ton about Santiago Luna's grappling. In order to provide a real in-depth breakdown of this fight, since Mitchell likes to grapple so much, I would need to see Luna in a lot more grappling exchanges, but he just hasn't fought a lot of good competition, so it's hard to say exactly how the grappling is going to play out between these two. However, if we had to guess, we would just say Bryce Mitchell will likely get the better of those exchanges just because Bryce Mitchell is really strong in the grappling realm, and most fighters, if we had to guess, just aren't going to be able to match that level. Santiago Luna, he's very young, so he can't have been training for that long, and it's not likely he has the skills necessary to compete with Mitchell in that realm. But because Luna is young, he's going to be full of testosterone. He's going to be dangerous early, coming at Mitchell with that boxing. Will he be able to close the distance against Mitchell, who stays at range with kicks? I don't know. But if he does hurt Mitchell, Mitchell's probably just going to try to shoot for takedowns. So I maybe see Luna winning this fight. If he can get aggressive early, hurt Mitchell, then shuck him off, use that wrestling background to defend, because I do think Luna has really good takedown defense, and then proceed with a finish. Shuck off the takedowns and Mitchell's hurt, finish him, and get out of there with a win. I just don't think it's going to be that easy. I think if Mitchell does get hurt early, I think he's going to be able to cling to Luna. Even if he doesn't take him down, he can hold him against the fence, work knees. And then because Luna slows down, I think eventually Bryce Mitchell's going to be able to stay safe, not have to worry about the power, and then really grease Luna up, hold him against the fence, find some takedowns, get to his back, and potentially start working for submission. So I think Bryce Mitchell's a good bet here. He did open up as like a huge favorite, but so much money is coming on Luna. I think you can absolutely place a bet on Bryce Mitchell, and that's exactly what I did. I think minus 138 is a good price, because down the stretch, I expect he's going to have a lot of success here in the grappling if he can survive, which I think he will. So give me Bryce Mitchell by round 2 submission. Lightweights, Fares Ziam, the Frenchman, taking on Tom Big Train Nolan, or as I like to call him, Chinny Train. Fares Ziam, he has improved so much. So a few years ago, I wasn't that impressed by him. I didn't think he was that skilled. I thought he was breakable. I didn't think he had the best conditioning, but yeah, he's just appeared to be really solid across the board, really solid in all areas. Seems to be a legitimate prospect at this point. He has a lot of length. He's going to be taller and have a lot more reach than the majority of lightweights. Not necessarily in this case, because Tom Nolan's a rangy guy as well, but for the most part, we see Ziam wanting to manage distance, does a really good job of slipping out of range of strikes, has some good kicks, good front kicks, good calf kicks, and he's got good hands. Recently, he's been flashing the power because he knocked out Matt Frivola, and I get it. Matt Frivola doesn't have a good chin, but Nazim Sadikov, that's a guy who has historically been very durable, so being able to cream him was definitely a good showing. And yeah, those knees and elbows by Ziam seem to be nasty. But in addition to good striking, Ziam's also pretty strong in the grappling. You take a look at this guy, he seems really lanky. Wouldn't expect him to be strong, but man, he can wrestle pretty well. He's got good takedowns from the body lock, but if he gets you with the high crotch or the double, he can lift you right up and dump you. And once he gets you on the ground, he's got decent control. He can work to your back, and if you get him down, he's pretty hard to control. Like, he can usually use butterflies, use his long limbs to try to reverse you or get back on top. I think he showed in his fight against Mike Davis that his grappling has really improved, because Davis was throwing all kinds of nasty submissions at him, and Ziam survived everything. Looked really strong overall in the grappling, so I've been really impressed with Fares Ziam lately. Tom Nolan, or Chinny Train as I like to call him, he fights out of the southpaw stance, and he just throws non-stop volume. He's just going to spam strikes, spam kicks, throws a lot of body kicks since he's a southpaw, and usually those are available when you fight people who are in the opposite stance. And he doesn't really seem to get tired that much. He's able to just throw strikes, and not get tired. So that is an asset of Tom Nolan, the fact that he's so long, he's got a decent amount of power, he can just throw strikes over and over again. That definitely makes him dangerous, but obviously I think he's got issues with his chin, and that's something people don't talk about enough. I can't believe people don't mention how chinny Tom Nolan is. Now, he got knocked out in his one loss, and then on top of that, we've seen him get hurt in multiple fights, including his last fight, and perhaps most disturbingly, he got dropped by Victor Martinez. How are you getting dropped by Martinez? I mean, you guys might be aware of the fact that he recently just fought Rong Zhu a few days ago. Rong Zhu was like minus 2,000. Nobody's taking Victor Martinez seriously, and you're getting dropped by him? Chinny Train has absolutely no chin. But on top of that, I think he's got some skill gaps as well. He's been working on his grappling, apparently, because you see him using it more and more in his fights. He was shooting a lot of takedowns against Vyacheslav Borshov, and then ended up submitting Charlie Campbell his last time out. So his grappling's not terrible, but I don't really think it's great. I think he can definitely be taken down and controlled. I think that's going to be an avenue for Ziam here, but another avenue for Ziam is to just whack this guy right on his chinny chin and put him out cold. So the way I see this fight going, because Tom Nolan is not super skilled, I don't think he really sets up his strikes that well. I think Ziam's going to see most of them coming, probably going to be able to slip out of range, avoid a lot of them, then counter. Nolan when he's off balance, because Nolan will take himself off balance quite a bit. One of those counter strikes could definitely put Nolan out, but like I said, I think Ziam could also potentially wrestle here, have some success in the grappling realm. So I think Ziam gets this one done. Not interested in laying minus 300 just because at the end of the day, Tom Nolan's aggressive, and when you throw that many strikes and you hit that hard, you are kind of a wild card, and you could get a KO win, you could hurt somebody, you could pull one over on just about anybody, so you don't want to go crazy with the Ziam money line. But I think this fight's going to finish. I think if Tom Nolan doesn't find a way to finish Ziam will eventually KO him or potentially sub him on the mat. So I'm going to go with Ziam here. I think he could get it done by KO, submission, or decision, but most likely I want to say he gets it done inside the distance. And then I'm going to go with KO because, of course, Tom Nolan has no chance. Give me Fares Ziam by round 1 KO. Could happen later in the fight, though. Co-main event, middleweights Brendan Allen taking on Edmen Shahbazyan. So this is an interesting one. Brendan Allen, kind of all over the place. I think his striking has gotten better because in the past, it's looked really, really ugly. He would kind of take himself off balance in the pocket. He would, misplace his feet, show a lack of strong footwork. And that would sort of cause him to be off balance when he threw his strikes. And he obviously doesn't have a great chin either. He suffered a knockout loss to Sean Strickland. We don't see Strickland knocking too many people out. He's also gotten hurt in several fights without getting knocked out. So even though I think the striking of Allen has improved, he's got good body kicks. He's got some decent boxing. He's got a good right hand. He can sort of pull and then counter with strikes. I don't think his striking's too good. But Allen's greatest strength is definitely in the grappling. If he gets on top, he has excellent BJJ top control. He does a good job of smothering you, not letting you get up, just staying really, really heavy on top of his opponents. And if you give him his back, he's also really, really slick with the back takes. He's got a good body triangle. He can work hooks and well. But we have also seen him get sloppy with the back takes. He can start to slide off like he did against Fluffy Hernandez. Now, Brendan Allen's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Early on in his UFC career, he didn't attempt a lot of takedowns, or not as many as you would expect him to, given how good his grappling was. More recently, he has increased his takedown attempt average, so he's attempting the takedowns you would expect him to, given that he's such a good grappler. But overall, I just don't think this guy's the sharpest tool in the shed, so not somebody I trust when it comes to making good decisions in the cage. Edmen, on the other hand, he's actually pretty skilled overall. I think his striking's really clean. He's got good distancing, maintains a good guard, and then throws punches right down the pipe. And he's got a lot of power on him. If you get caught by this guy on the chin, you're going to be going out. And he's gotten some knockout wins in his last few fights. Of course, most of his wins are by knockout. And to be honest, even though we've seen him submitted, even though we've seen him dominate on the ground, I don't think his grappling's that bad. He's got good takedown defense. He's pretty strong. Has good underhooks. He can usually get back to his feet when taken down. Even has some submission skills of his own. But the reason why we see him get dominated on the mat is because he just doesn't have good stamina. So if you're wrestling him a lot, making him work, he's going to get tired and then he's going to eventually quit. He's going to just fade and he's not going to be able to fight back anymore. So that's one of the big issues you got to watch out for looking to back Edmen Shahbazyan, and that's just the fact that if it goes beyond 7.5 minutes of a fight, he's probably not going to be able to do too well. He's probably going to end up cooked. Very rarely does this guy go to decision. Almost all of his wins come early in fights, and then almost all of his losses are due to late finishes. How is this fight going to play out? So Brendan Allen, like I said, he's kind of a wild card. You don't know what he's going to do. I do think Shahbazyan could probably defend a lot of his takedowns, but if Brendan Allen gets him down early, it's not going to be super easy for Shahbazyan to get back up. And if Brendan Allen can take his back, he might be live for an early sub. Now on the feet, I think Brendan Allen's going to be able to push a higher pace. He definitely throws more strikes, if I'm not mistaken. And he could tag up Shahbazyan a little bit. Shahbazyan is definitely the better striker, and he's got the better chin. So if Brendan Allen's messing around too much in the striking, taking himself off balance, leaving openings, then Shahbazyan could clean him right down the pipe, smoke him, knock him out. And I think in that way, Shahbazyan is going to be live. But even if Allen's not grappling, if he just somehow survives to the later portions of the fight, I think Shahbazyan will slow down and we could see Brendan Allen take over, because Brendan Allen's definitely not going to quit, and even if he gets tired, he's going to try to dog it out. He's going to keep fighting. So I think Shahbazyan has good finishing upside early. If for some reason Brendan Allen's fighting really dumb and like not pressuring Shahbazyan as much as he needs to. Shahbazyan could also win a decision or get something late. Most likely, I'm going to say Brendan Allen probably tires Shahbazyan out and finds a submission, but I'm not too confident in that. And as a result, if I had to bet one of these guys, it'd be Shahbazyan at plus 180. But that's not quite enough meat on the bone for me at this point. And if it got up to like 215, 220, then I'd lay it. But yeah, I think Edmund Shahbazyan has a good chance of getting an early KO because Brendan Allen, not the most defensively sound, doesn't have the best chin. And then I think if Allen wins, it's probably going to be by submission, most likely later in the fight. Could also see this fight going to decision. Again, you just can't really trust Brendan Allen. No one really knows what he's going to do. He doesn't make good decisions. Sometimes he's not taking the best avenue to victory. I think Brendan Allen's going to get it done. We'll say round 2 sub, but I'm going to keep an eye on the line because if money comes in on him, I will look at a Shahbazyan bet. Probably if he gets like plus 210 to plus 220. Finally, we got an interesting welterweight matchup for our main event. Belal Muhammad, the former champion, taking on Gabriel Bonfim. Now, Belal Muhammad, one thing that's always stood out to me is the fact that he's just not a tremendous athlete. Obviously, he works hard and is in good shape. All of these guys are in decent shape, but compared to other UFC fighters, Muhammad just isn't the most athletically gifted. He is very tactical, though. He's got good fight IQ. I think he understands what most of his opponent's weaknesses are. It might be a little weird to say that because he fought Jack Della Maddalena not too long ago and very foolishly wanted to test out his Canelo hand instead of trying to wrestle JDM. And as we've learned, that's not too hard to do because we saw Makhachev out-wrestle JDM easily. And yeah, a lot of people say Muhammad could have won that fight if he fought smarter and didn't try to, strike with JDM for so long. But for the most part, I'd say he is very tactical. He's got decent striking, he's got decent kicks, he can mix things up, and of course, use his wrestling. He's got a decent double leg takedown, a good knee tap. He can hold against the fence if he needs to, and that's something he might want to resort to here. If he ends up in trouble at all, you might want to start shooting for takedowns, look to hold against the fence, slow Bonfim down, start chipping away with short strikes to the body. And that's always something he can resort to. We kind of saw that against Ian Gary. We tried to close distance and ended up holding him against the cage a bit. He might need to weather an early storm here. So Bonfim, he's been changing up his approach, and we'll talk about him in a second. But Muhammad is definitely going to have to watch out early because Bonfim has a lot of early finishes, and he's much faster, much better of an athlete. I do think while these guys are at distance, Bonfim's going to be the much swifter fighter for sure. He's got really good calf kicks. I don't really like the way Belal Muhammad defends those. I think the legs of Muhammad could get beat up a bit early, but since Belal Muhammad switches stances, I don't know if it's going to end up being a huge problem. If one leg gets damaged particularly bad, he can just, hide it for a little while, switch things up. And I don't think the calf kicks are going to end up being a huge factor, even though Bonfim could land some big calf kicks. But the hands of Bonfim could do quite a bit of damage. Earlier in Bonfim's career, before he suffered his first loss, he was really aggressive with the way he was pressuring people. He was moving forward, moving his head, working a power jab, ducking, coming back up with hooks, coming back with combinations, just really destroying people. It was fun to watch. But ever since he lost to Nicholas Dalby, because he essentially just gassed out and quit, Dalby was just working him nonstop against the fence. Bonfim had no energy left in the second round and ended up just getting drowned by Dalby and losing by second round TKO. Ever since then, Bonfim's been more hesitant, been relying more on the calf kick, relying more on the jab, trying to stay at range. I actually think it might benefit him to move forward here. Try to pressure Belal Muhammad and do as much damage early so that even if Muhammad doesn't get finished, Bonfim has done enough damage to, prevent Muhammad from mounting any offense. He's just probably going to be in recovery condition if Bonfim lays a lot of damage early. So the boxing and the calf kicks are really, really strong. Bonfim also has really good grappling. He's got a nice double leg shot. He's nasty with his submissions. He's got a good guillotine. He's got good front chokes overall. We saw him take out Chaos Williams with a front choke, rendered him unconscious. And if taken down, Bonfim can even get up pretty well. So I don't think Bonfim taking down Muhammad is out of the question. Muhammad has had really good takedown defense for most of his UFC career, but we saw JDM even take him down, so it's not impossible. Of course, I don't think Bonfim's going to be able to hold down Muhammad or anything. The big problem we have with Bonfim, and this goes for both of the Bonfim brothers, because of course, we've got Ismail Bonfim, who's quit a ton in the cage. these guys flake out at the first sign of adversity. And even though Bonfim's on a bit of a win streak, I don't think he's corrected the problem of flaking out. Now, I mentioned the Dalby fight when he just quit in the second round after Dalby started to really put on a pace, started drowning him. Even though Bonfim's gotten a win streak by that, I just don't think the flakiness has been cured. I find it hard to believe that this guy is brothers with Ismail Bonfim, a chronic quitter, and doesn't have quit in him himself. And in my opinion, we already saw a glimpse of quit since the Nicholas Dalby fight, even though Bonfim hasn't lost yet. If you watch the Wonder Boy Thompson fight, there's just this one moment I don't like when Bonfim falls off of Wonder Boy's back, ends up on bottom, and he's just like immediately covering up. And Wonder Boy's not known as someone who has crazy ground and pound, but Bonfim was just flaking up. Looked like he was showing signs of maybe starting to quit. Ended up not being a problem for him, but based on that visual, I just think Bonfim's going to quit at the first sign of adversity still. I think he still has those issues with flaking out. So, if Muhammad can start to get some pressure going, if he can weather the early storm, not get terribly beat up by calf kicks, which I don't think he will, not get too beat up by Bonfim on the feet, not get knocked out, obviously, I think Muhammad's going to start being able to come forward with combinations, work some kicks to the body, and use that good 1-1-2. He closes the distance really well with a double jab right hand. And if he tags Bonfim over and over with that, I think eventually Bonfim's going to start to flake out. And of course, if Muhammad can start to slow him down with cage pressing, work some strikes to the body, take him down, work some ground and pound, even though Muhammad doesn't have super strong punches, he can at least put together some volume from those control positions. I think Muhammad's going to wear Bonfim down and finish him. And it's crazy to say this, if the fight goes to decision, I think Bonfim has a better chance of winning than people will think, because if Muhammad's winning this fight, I think he's winning by KO. I think he's getting Bonfim to quit over the course of 5 rounds. I think around the second, third round, Bonfim is going to be starting to eat a lot of strikes from Muhammad. If he hasn't significantly damaged Muhammad, or if Muhammad isn't being hesitant for some reason, I think Muhammad's going to mount the volume on Bonfim, find ways to get inside safely, find ways to close the distance without getting hit too much, mix in the grappling when needed, and then just wear enough on Bonfim to get him to quit over the course of 5 rounds. That's what I think is going to happen. I think Muhammad is most likely going to make Bonfim quit and win by TKO. That's crazy to say because Muhammad is known as a decisionator. His record is actually hilarious, like how few finishes he has if you just go to Tapology. But I do think he gets a finish here. Give me Bilal Muhammad by round 3 TKO, and his money line's coming down. If it goes like minus 115, I'll probably have a bet on him. But I think Muhammad is the side here. In my opinion, he gets it done around 60% of the time. So that's going to do it. We finished breaking down all the fights. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. You can leave a nice comment. You can leave a mean comment. You can even leave a comment about cake. And we got more UFC action coming up for the remainder of June. After this card, we got UFC Freedom 250. Really excited to talk about that one. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.